My name is Emily Johnson, and at 26, I built a successful marketing career in New York City. After 2 years away, I was finally heading home for Thanksgiving, excited but nervous about seeing my family, especially my sister Madison. Our relationship had been strained for years. As I stood on the porch of my childhood home, arms loaded with expensive gifts, memories flooded back. Then I heard it through the cracked door, Madison's whisper to her husband, "Can't wait for Emily to leave." I smiled, took a deep breath, and shut the door behind me. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories about family drama and healing broken relationships. Madison and I were born 3 years apart, but for most of our childhood, that age gap meant nothing. We were inseparable, 2 peas in a pod as our mother used to say. Our bedroom walls were covered with photos of us in matching outfits, building sandcastles at the beach, or dressed as princesses for Halloween. Being the older sister, Madison was always the leader, and I was her willing follower. "Emmy," she would say, using the nickname only she was allowed to use, "let's build a fort." And within minutes, our living room would transform into an elaborate structure of blankets, pillows, and chairs. We'd spend hours inside with flashlights, telling ghost stories and giggling until our parents ordered us to bed. We had secret codes too. 3 taps on the wall between our bedrooms meant "I'm scared." 4 quick taps followed by 2 slow ones meant "Meet me in the treehouse, I have a secret." We used these codes throughout elementary school, our own private language that no one else understood. At school, Madison was my protector. When Amber Wilson pushed me off the swings in 2nd grade, Madison, a mighty 5th grader then, marched right over and demanded an apology. "Nobody messes with my little sister," she declared, and I remember feeling so proud to be her sister. Madison was always the confident one. She walked into rooms like she owned them, made friends easily, and never seemed afraid of anything. I was her opposite, shy, bookish, and anxious in social situations. She'd often introduce me to her friends, pulling me from behind her with a gentle but firm hand. "This is my sister Emily. She's smart as a whip." Her pride in me gave me strength. When I was 11, a group of girls in my class started making fun of my second-hand clothes. I came home crying one day, and Madison, 14 and wise beyond her years, sat me down for a heart-to-heart. "People who make fun of others are just insecure about themselves," she explained, wiping my tears away. "You're beautiful and intelligent, and one day, you'll be their boss. Remember that." She then taught me how to stand tall, make eye contact, and deliver a confident comeback. We practiced in the mirror for hours, and the next day, when Lisa Johnston sneered at my shoes, I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I'd rather have worn shoes than worn out insults." Madison had helped me find my voice. The summer before Madison left for college was magical. We stayed up late watching movies, went shopping with our meager savings, and made promises to call each other every day. I couldn't imagine our house without her energetic presence, her loud laughter, and even her messy room. But when she left for State University, something shifted. I suddenly had space to grow. Without Madison's shadow, large and comfortable as it was, I started to discover who Emily Johnson could be. I joined debate club, something I'd never had the confidence to do before. To everyone's surprise, especially my own, I was good at it. Really good. By junior year, I was the team captain and had led our school to the state championships twice. My grades, always strong, became exceptional. Teachers started mentioning prestigious scholarships and Ivy League possibilities. When I won the governor's scholarship for academic excellence, something Madison had applied for but didn't receive, I noticed the first real crack in our relationship. It was the way she congratulated me, a tight-lipped "That's great, Em," followed by quickly changing the subject. At the celebration dinner my parents insisted on throwing, Madison barely touched her food and excused herself early, claiming a headache. Later that night, I overheard her talking to her friend on the phone. "It's always been so easy for her," she said, her voice tinged with something I'd never heard from her before, resentment. "She doesn't even have to try." That wasn't true, of course. I studied constantly, often late into the night. But that was the first time I realized that Madison saw me differently than I saw myself. In her eyes, I wasn't the awkward little sister anymore. I was competition. Still, I dismissed these early warning signs. Sisters have rough patches, I told myself. Our bond was too strong to be broken by something as trivial as a scholarship. Madison had always been my hero, my protector, my best friend. I couldn't imagine that ever changing. But as I would soon learn, time and distance can transform even the closest relationships, sometimes in ways we never expect or want. My acceptance to Cornell University with a partial scholarship was both a dream come true and the beginning of a nightmare for my relationship with Madison. While our parents popped champagne and called every relative in their contact list, Madison offered a perfunctory hug and retreated to her room. She was in her second year at State University then, studying business administration but struggling to maintain her grades. During my freshman year, I threw myself into campus life, joining marketing clubs and securing a coveted internship with a local advertising agency. Meanwhile, Madison's calls became less frequent. When we did talk, she'd change the subject whenever I mentioned my classes or new friends. By Thanksgiving break, the distance between us was palpable. I came home buzzing with stories about college life, but Madison seemed disinterested, often checking her phone while I talked. "Nobody cares about your fancy professors, Em," she snapped when I mentioned my marketing instructor's connections to major New York agencies. The table fell silent. Mom shot Madison a disapproving look, while Dad awkwardly cleared his throat. "Madison," Mom said firmly, "we're all proud of Emily's accomplishments." That was precisely the problem. Our parents' pride in me had become a source of pain for Madison. The situation deteriorated further during my sophomore year when Madison called home to announce she was dropping out. Her GPA had fallen below the requirement to maintain her scholarship, and she couldn't afford to continue without it. "College isn't for everyone," Dad said, trying to comfort her. I knew he meant well, but his words seemed to cut Madison deeper. She moved back to our hometown and took a job at Riverside Mall, selling women's clothing. When I came home for Christmas, I noticed she'd stopped mentioning her job around me. I tried to bridge the gap, asking about her coworkers and if she enjoyed retail, but her answers were clipped. "We can't all be academic superstars," she said one evening, the bitterness in her voice unmistakable. That spring break, I accepted an internship in New York instead of coming home. Madison took this as another sign that I thought I was too good for our family. The truth was, I was avoiding the tension that had become unbearable. During my junior year, Madison met John Williams at a local bar. Their relationship progressed quickly, and within 8 months, they were engaged. She called me with the news, sounding happier than she had in years. "The wedding's set for May 15th, she said excitedly. "You'll be my maid of honor, right?" My heart sank. May 15th was the same day as my final interview for a summer position at Thompson Marketing in New York, an opportunity that could set the trajectory of my entire career. "Madison, I started, my voice trembling. "That's the day of my big interview in New York. The one I've been working toward all year." The silence on the other end was deafening. "Of course," she finally said, her voice cold. "Your career comes first. It always has. Can you move the wedding by just one day?" I pleaded. "I'll fly home immediately after." "Forget it, Emily. It was silly of me to think you'd prioritize my special day. Cassie can be my maid of honor." She hung up before I could respond. I called back repeatedly, but she wouldn't answer. Mom tried to mediate, but Madison was adamant. I had chosen my career over my sister, and she would never forgive me. I didn't attend the wedding. Madison sent a brief text afterward, "Married now. Hope your interview was worth it." It was cruel but effective. The position at Thompson launched my career, but cost me my relationship with my sister. After graduation, I accepted a full-time position at Thompson Marketing in New York. My rapid ascent in the company became the subject of family dinner conversations that notably excluded Madison, who now seldom came to family gatherings if I would be present. Over the next 2 years, I tried to repair our relationship. I sent birthday gifts, Christmas presents, and regular text messages about mundane things, hoping to rebuild our connection through everyday conversations. Most went unanswered or received single-word replies. When Madison announced her pregnancy, I sent an expensive crib and a heartfelt card. She sent a formal thank you note that could have been written to a distant acquaintance. While my career flourished, promotions, salary increases, my own office with a view of Manhattan, Madison settled into life as a stay-at-home mom after the birth of her daughter, Emma. I found out about my niece's birth through Mom, not Madison. The distance between New York and our hometown wasn't just physical, it represented the vastly different lives we'd chosen. Or perhaps, the lives that had chosen us. Despite everything, I never stopped hoping we might find our way back to each other. That's why, after 2 years of avoiding home for holidays, I decided to book a flight for Thanksgiving. Mom was ecstatic, Dad was relieved, and Madison was, well, Madison didn't respond to the group text announcing my visit. I told myself this trip would be different. I'd be humble, ask about her life, show interest in her daughter, avoid any mention of my recent promotion to senior marketing director. I'd bring thoughtful gifts and be the sister I should have been all along. But standing on that porch, hearing her whispered words, "Can't wait for Emily to leave," I realized I might have been too optimistic about healing our broken relationship in just one holiday weekend. The flight from New York to Springfield had been turbulent, much like my emotions about this visit. I'd splurged on first-class tickets, not because I wanted to show off, but because the extra legroom would help me arrive less cranky after the 3-hour journey. The irony wasn't lost on me. Even my attempt to be in a better mood for my family could be interpreted as flaunting my success. The taxi pulled up to the familiar colonial-style house where I'd grown up. Mom had decorated for fall with the same enthusiasm she'd had since we were kids, a scarecrow by the mailbox, pumpkins lining the walkway, and a wreath of autumn leaves on the front door. Some things never changed, even when everything else did. I paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, taking it all in. The maple tree in the front yard had grown taller, its leaves a brilliant crimson. Dad had finally painted the shutters from forest green to navy blue, something Mom had been requesting for years. The neighborhood felt smaller somehow, or maybe I'd just grown larger in my time away. The weight of the shopping bags in my hands reminded me of my determination to make this visit different. I'd spent weeks selecting gifts, a cashmere sweater for Mom in her favorite shade of burgundy, a rare first edition of Dad's favorite author for his collection, an engraved watch for John, I barely knew him but wanted to make an effort, and for Madison, a spa package at the best resort in Springfield. For little Emma, my 2-year-old niece I'd never met, I'd brought an assortment of educational toys and the softest teddy bear I could find. As I walked up the familiar cracked pathway, memories flooded back. Madison and I playing hopscotch on these very concrete squares. Racing each other to the door after school. The time Madison fell and scraped her knee, and I, at age 6, solemnly promised I could kiss it better like Mom did. For a moment, I was that little girl again, following in her big sister's footsteps, wanting nothing more than her approval. The November air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and someone's fireplace nearby. I could smell Mom's pumpkin pie through the partially open door. Some things were sacred in the Johnson household, and Mom's Thanksgiving pie recipe was one of them. I stood on the porch, my heart hammering against my ribs. 2 years. 2 years since I'd been home, since I'd seen Madison face to face. Our last encounter had been at Mom's birthday, a tense dinner where we'd managed civility but nothing more. I took a deep breath, balancing my luggage and gift bags, and raised my hand to knock. That's when I heard it. Madison's voice, floating through the crack in the door, not quite closed against the draft. She was talking to someone, John, presumably, in the living room. "I'm just saying, 3 days is my limit," she was saying, her voice low but clear enough. "Can't wait for Emily to leave. 3 days of her bragging about New York will be torture enough." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back slightly, nearly dropping one of the bags. A wave of nausea rolled through me, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I'd known things were bad between us, but hearing the naked contempt in her voice, the voice that had once told me bedtime stories and assured me there were no monsters under my bed, was devastating. My face burned with humiliation. My first instinct was to turn around, call an Uber, and head straight back to the airport. I could be in my Manhattan apartment by midnight, licking my wounds in private. I could text Mom some excuse about a work emergency. It would be easier than facing 3 days of Madison's resentment. But as I stood there, frozen in indecision, I realized something: running away wouldn't fix anything. It would only confirm Madison's belief that I thought I was too good for them, that my life in New York was more important than my family. I squared my shoulders and swallowed hard against the lump in my throat. I would not let her see me cry. I would not give her the satisfaction of knowing her words had wounded me so deeply. Instead, I would be gracious. I would be kind. I would try to understand why my own sister had come to hate me so much. I practiced my smile, the one I used in difficult client meetings when everything was going wrong but I couldn't show weakness. Professional, pleasant, but not overly warm. A smile that revealed nothing of the heartbreak beneath it. Then I pushed the door open and stepped inside, the warmth of the house enveloping me instantly. "Hello?" I called out, my voice remarkably steady. "I'm home." There was a sudden scramble in the living room, and then Mom appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands on her apron, her face lighting up at the sight of me. "Emily," she cried, rushing forward to embrace me. "Oh, sweetheart, we've missed you so much." Over her shoulder, I could see Madison standing in the living room doorway, her expression a complicated mix of emotions. Beside her stood a tall man with kind eyes who had to be John. He looked embarrassed, and I wondered if he knew I'd overheard. "Hi, Maddie," I said, using her childhood nickname deliberately, my smile never wavering. "It's been too long." Madison's answering smile didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome home, Em," she said, the words correct but the warmth missing. She stepped forward for a brief, awkward hug, her body stiff against mine. And just like that, I was back in the complicated web of family dynamics, playing a role in a drama that had been unfolding for years. But this time I knew exactly where I stood in my sister's eyes. The question was whether anything I could do over the next 3 days would change that. The Johnson family dining room hadn't changed much in the past decade. The same faded floral wallpaper my mother refused to replace, it has character, Emily. The oak table with water ring stains from countless family dinners, and the china cabinet showcasing Mom's prized collection of porcelain birds. The familiarity was both comforting and suffocating. We gathered around the table for what Mom called pre-Thanksgiving dinner, her tradition of having a special meal the night before the main event. Dad carved the roast chicken with surgical precision while Mom bustled around, making sure everyone had enough potatoes, green beans, and her famous dinner rolls. I sat across from Madison, with John beside her and little Emma in a booster seat at the end of the table. My niece was adorable, blonde curls like Madison had as a child, and bright blue eyes that regarded me with unabashed curiosity. "So, Emma," I said, smiling at the toddler, "I'm your Aunt Emily. It's very nice to finally meet you." Emma stared at me for a moment before declaring, "You have pretty hair," then immediately returned her attention to mashing potatoes with single-minded determination. "She's at that honest phase," John explained with an apologetic smile. He seemed nice, gentle eyes, a quick smile, the kind of steadiness that would complement Madison's more volatile nature. "Everything is either pretty or yucky. No middle ground." "I'll take pretty as a win," I laughed. "Madison had beautiful curls like that when she was little too." "She still does when she doesn't straighten it to death," Mom chimed in. "Remember when you girls used to fight over the bathroom mirror every morning? Madison with her curling iron and Emily trying to straighten her hair. Always wanting what we didn't have," I said, catching Madison's eye with a genuine smile. "Some things never change." Something flickered in Madison's expression, a softening, perhaps, but it was quickly replaced by her neutral mask. "Emma, eat your chicken, not just potatoes," she said, avoiding my gaze. Dad, ever the peacemaker, jumped in. Emily, tell us about New York. Still enjoying the big city life? I noticed Madison's barely perceptible eye roll and chose my words carefully. It's convenient for work, but honestly, it's exhausting sometimes. My apartment is the size of our living room, and costs 4 times as much. But I bet the view makes up for it, Madison interjected, a slight edge to her voice. All those city lights from your corner office. Actually, my apartment faces a brick wall, I said lightly. But I can see a sliver of the Hudson if I lean out the window and crane my neck just right. I turned to John. Madison said you're in construction management? That must be interesting. John seemed relieved by the change of subject. It's good work. I'm overseeing the new community center project downtown. That's impressive, I said sincerely. Is that the one by the old library? That's the one, John nodded, warming to the topic. We're incorporating the original facade but completely modernizing the interior. Should be done by next summer. John's been promoted twice in the past year, Madison said, a protective note in her voice. The company really values him. As they should, I agreed. That's fantastic, John. The conversation flowed more easily after that, with Dad sharing stories about his dental practice and Mom updating me on various relatives. I was careful to ask questions rather than talk about myself, to compliment Madison's parenting whenever I could, to treat John as the successful professional he clearly was. After dinner, we moved to the living room for coffee and Mom's apple crumble. I seized the opportunity to distribute my gifts, hoping they might help bridge the chasm between Madison and me. Mom was delighted with her cashmere sweater, immediately trying it on over her blouse. Dad examined his first edition with reverent hands, adjusting his glasses to peer at the signature inside. John seemed genuinely touched by the watch, especially the engraving, for John, welcome to the family. Emily. This is too generous, he said, looking slightly uncomfortable. I waved away his concern. I missed your wedding and the birth of your daughter. Consider it making up for lost time. When Madison opened her gift, the certificate for a full day at Springfield's most exclusive spa, her expression was unreadable. This is extravagant, she finally said, tucking the envelope back into the gift bag. You really didn't need to do this. I wanted to, I insisted. You deserve some pampering. Being a full-time mom is the hardest job there is. Madison's jaw tightened. Some of us don't have the luxury of choosing our jobs, Emily. We do what needs to be done. The room fell silent. Dad suddenly became very interested in his coffee cup, while Mom shot Madison a warning look. I didn't mean, I began, but Madison was already standing up. Emma needs her bath. It's past her bedtime. She scooped up the toddler, who protested loudly that she hadn't finished her dessert. I can take her up if you want to finish your coffee, John offered, but Madison shook her head. I've got it. Her tone left no room for argument. She turned to our parents. Good night, Mom, Dad. Dinner was lovely as always. She didn't look at me as she carried Emma upstairs, the little girl waving goodbye over her shoulder. John looked at me apologetically. She's been under a lot of pressure lately, he said quietly. It's not personal. But we both knew that wasn't true. It was entirely personal. After an awkward silence, Dad spoke up. Emily, why don't you go talk to her? She might open up more one-on-one. Mom nodded encouragement. She's missed you, even if she won't admit it. I doubted that very much, but I nodded. I'll give her a few minutes with Emma first. 20 minutes later, I stood outside the guest bedroom where Madison and John were staying, listening to the soft murmur of her voice as she read Emma a bedtime story. The same story she used to read to me, Goodnight Moon. I closed my eyes, remembering how safe I felt when Madison read to me, how special. When the story ended and the light under the door dimmed, I took a deep breath and knocked softly. John? Madison called. It's me, I replied. Can we talk? There was a long pause before Madison opened the door. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and my heart sank. I'd made my sister cry. Again. Emma's asleep, she whispered, stepping into the hallway and pulling the door nearly closed behind her. What do you want to talk about? The coldness in her voice stung, but I pressed on. I think we should clear the air. I know things have been strained between us, and I want to fix that. Madison gave a short, humorless laugh. Fix it? Of course you do. Emily the fixer. Emily the perfect. I'm far from perfect, Madison. Could have fooled me, she said, folding her arms across her chest. Look, I appreciate the gift, but you can't just throw money at our problems and expect everything to be better. That's not what I was trying to do, I protested. I just wanted to give you something nice. Something nice, she repeated, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself and lowered it again. Do you have any idea how it feels to have your little sister waltz in with gifts worth more than your monthly budget? To have everyone fawning over her success while you're just the stay-at-home mom who couldn't hack it in college? The raw pain in her voice shocked me. Madison, nobody thinks that about you. Don't they? Mom keeps your interview article from Marketing Weekly on the fridge. On the fridge. Like you're still in elementary school bringing home A+ papers. I hadn't known that. I'm sorry. I can ask her to take it down. That's not the point. Madison's control slipped, her voice cracking. The point is that you left. You left this town, you left this family, and you created this amazing life that makes everything I've done seem small and insignificant in comparison. The conversation was rapidly spiraling into exactly what I'd feared. But there was no turning back now. Let's continue this in your room, I suggested, nodding toward our parents' bedroom door down the hall. I don't want Mom and Dad to hear us arguing. Madison hesitated, then nodded, opening the door to the guest room and slipping inside. I followed, closing the door softly behind me. The confrontation I'd been dreading for years was finally happening, and I had no idea if our relationship would survive it. The guest room was dimly lit by a bedside lamp, casting long shadows across the walls. Emma slept peacefully in a portable crib in the corner, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Madison perched on the edge of the bed, arms still crossed defensively, while I leaned against the dresser, maintaining a safe distance between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was Emma's soft breathing and the distant murmur of the television downstairs where Mom and Dad were pretending not to worry about us. I heard you, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. When I arrived. Through the door. Madison's expression flickered between surprise and defiance. What are you talking about? I heard you tell John you couldn't wait for me to leave. That 3 days of me would be torture. She had the grace to look momentarily ashamed, but quickly recovered. Well, can you blame me? Every time you visit, it's the Emily show. Emily's promotion, Emily's amazing apartment, Emily's fabulous New York friends. That's not fair, I protested. I barely talked about myself since I arrived. Because you're trying to prove a point. Madison hissed, mindful of her sleeping daughter. Playing the humble sister role doesn't erase the past 2 years of Christmas cards filled with your accomplishments while you couldn't even be bothered to attend my wedding. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. My Christmas letters had been tone-deaf, focused on my career milestones without considering how they might be received by my struggling sister. I wanted to be at your wedding, Madison. That interview was scheduled months in advance. And you couldn't reschedule? She interrupted. For your only sister's wedding? Do you have any idea how humiliating it was explaining to everyone why my maid of honor was a childhood friend instead of my sister? I tried. I insisted. Thompson doesn't reschedule final interviews. If I'd asked, they would have hired someone else. Exactly. Madison's eyes flashed with hurt and anger. Your job was more important than me. It always has been. More important than family dinners, more important than Mom's surgery last year. That's not fair, I interjected. I flew home as soon as I heard about Mom's surgery. 3 days after the fact. Madison countered. Because you were in an important conference and couldn't check your phone. Meanwhile, I was the one sitting in the hospital for 8 hours, holding Dad's hand while he worried himself sick. I felt a flush of shame. She was right about that. I'd been presenting to our biggest client when Mom had her emergency gallbladder surgery. I'd missed 6 calls from Dad. I'm sorry about Mom's surgery, I said quietly. I should have been there sooner. Madison looked momentarily taken aback by my apology but quickly regrouped. It's not just the surgery, Emily. It's everything. You abandoned this family. You abandoned me. I didn't abandon anyone. I just built my own life. A life that makes you too good for Springfield. Too good for us. That's not true, I insisted, feeling my own anger rising. I've tried to stay connected. I call Mom and Dad weekly. I send gifts. I reach out to you, but you never respond. Because I don't want your pity. Madison's voice rose, causing Emma to stir in her sleep. We both froze, watching until the toddler settled again. When Madison spoke again, her voice was lower but no less intense. Do you know what it's like living in this town with Emily Johnson's sister as my identity? The dental receptionist who asks about you every time I take Emma for a checkup? Mom's friends at church who say, "How's your sister doing in the big city?" before they even ask about my daughter. I hadn't considered how my success might affect Madison's daily life in our hometown. The thought made my chest ache. I didn't realize, I admitted. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it, Madison said, but some of the fight had gone out of her voice. She looked tired suddenly, the anger giving way to exhaustion. It doesn't fix any of it. What would fix it? I asked softly. Tell me what you need from me, Madison. I want to make this right. She laughed, a hollow sound. That's the problem with you, Emily. You think everything can be fixed with enough determination. Some things are just broken. I don't believe that, I said. Not about us. Madison looked away, staring at the sleeping form of her daughter. Did you know we've been trying for another baby for over a year? She said abruptly. The doctors say there might be complications. That it might not happen. The sudden vulnerability in her confession caught me off guard. No, I didn't know. I'm so sorry, Madison. John lost his job 3 months ago, she continued, still not looking at me. The construction company downsized. He's been doing odd jobs while looking for something permanent. That's why we're staying here instead of at our place. We had to sublet our apartment to make ends meet. Each revelation was like a punch to my stomach. My sister's life had been falling apart, and I'd had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, moving to sit beside her on the bed. She didn't pull away. I could have helped. That's exactly why I didn't tell you, Madison said, finally meeting my eyes. I didn't want your help. Your charity. I didn't want to be another problem for successful Emily to solve. It wouldn't be charity, I said. It would be family. That's what family does, they help each other. Like you helped by missing my wedding? The words were harsh, but the fire had gone out of them. She sounded more sad than angry now. I made a mistake, I admitted. A huge one. I've regretted it every day since. Madison was quiet for a long moment. New York isn't perfect, is it? She finally asked, her voice small. You're not actually living some magical dream life? The question surprised me. No, I said honestly. It's not perfect at all. My apartment is tiny and outrageously expensive. I work 70-hour weeks. I haven't had a relationship last longer than 3 months since I moved there because I'm always at the office. I hesitated, then added the truth I rarely admitted even to myself, I'm lonely a lot of the time. I miss having people who know the real me, not just work Emily. The real you, Madison repeated. I'm not sure I know who that is anymore. Neither am I sometimes, I confessed. That's partly why I came home. Not just for Thanksgiving, but because I needed to remember who I am beyond my job title. Madison studied my face, as if trying to determine if I was being sincere. Why do you even care about fixing things with me? You have your glamorous life, your career. What do you need a small-town sister for? The question broke my heart. Because you're my sister, I said, my voice cracking. Because some of my happiest memories are of us building blanket forts and using our secret codes. Because when I achieve something good, my first thought is still to tell you, even though I know you probably don't want to hear it. I wiped away a tear that had escaped despite my best efforts. Because I miss my best friend. Madison's composure finally crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she covered her face with her hands. I miss her too, she whispered between quiet sobs. I miss her so much. I tentatively put an arm around her shoulders, and when she didn't pull away, I drew her into a full embrace. We sat like that, crying together, releasing years of hurt and misunderstanding. I'm sorry I've been so awful to you, Madison said when her tears subsided. I've been so jealous and bitter. When you got that scholarship, when you moved to New York, it felt like you were leaving me behind. Like you didn't need me anymore. I've always needed you, I said. I just didn't know how to show it without making things worse. A soft knock on the door interrupted our moment. John's concerned face appeared as he cracked the door open. Everything okay in here? He asked, his eyes moving between us, taking in our tear-streaked faces. We're working on it, Madison said, offering him a watery smile. John nodded, understanding. I'll give you two some more time. As he started to close the door, Madison called out, actually, could you grab us some tissues? And maybe that bottle of wine from the kitchen? John smiled. Coming right up. Madison turned back to me as the door closed. We have a lot more to talk about. We do, I agreed. But for the first time in years, I think we might actually be able to have that conversation. A small noise from the portable crib drew our attention. Emma was awake, watching us with curious eyes. Mommy crying? She asked, her little face concerned. Madison wiped her eyes and went to lift her daughter from the crib. Mommy's okay, sweetie. Just talking with Aunt Emily. Aunt Emily, Emma repeated, looking at me with newfound interest. That's right, Madison said, bringing Emma back to the bed. Your Aunt Emily. She's my sister. Like me and baby? Emma asked, patting Madison's stomach. Madison's eyes widened. Emma. That's supposed to be a secret. My jaw dropped. Are you? Madison gave a small, shy smile. 6 weeks. We just found out yesterday. We weren't going to tell anyone yet, but apparently someone's been eavesdropping. She tickled Emma's tummy, eliciting a delighted giggle. Madison, that's wonderful. I exclaimed, joy bubbling up inside me. I thought you said. The doctors said it might be difficult, not impossible, she explained. It was a surprise to us too. I felt honored that I was among the first to know, even if by accident. Maybe there was hope for us after all. John returned with tissues and wine, and for the first time in years, Madison and I talked, really talked, late into the night, with Emma sleeping peacefully between us and John offering occasional insights from his perspective as an outsider to our complicated history. It wasn't a complete reconciliation. Years of hurt couldn't be healed in one night. But it was a beginning, a crack in the wall that had separated us for too long. The next morning, I woke early, my body still on New York time. The house was quiet as I made my way downstairs to the kitchen, hoping to surprise Mom by starting the coffee. To my surprise, John was already there, nursing a cup and reading something on his phone. Morning, he said with a slight nod. Coffee's fresh if you want some. Thanks, I replied, helping myself to a mug from the cabinet. You're up early. Emma's our alarm clock, he explained. She's back to sleep now, but I'm programmed to be up at 5:30 regardless. We sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, the only sound the occasional sip of coffee and the old refrigerator's gentle hum. "I want to apologize," John finally said, setting down his phone. "For what you overheard yesterday." Madison was just stressed about the visit. She didn't mean it. I appreciated his loyalty to his wife, even if we both knew he wasn't being entirely truthful. "It's okay. We talked it out last night." "I know. She told me a lot after you went to bed." He hesitated. "Look, there's something you should know about Madison. You don't have to defend her." "I'm not defending her," he interrupted gently. "I'm explaining. Did you know she was laid off from the mall job 6 months ago?" I blinked in surprise. "No. She told me last night about your job, but not hers." John nodded. "The entire women's department was eliminated when the store changed ownership. She didn't tell your parents because she didn't want them to worry. And she definitely didn't want to tell you. Because she thought I'd judge her," I realized aloud. "Partly that," John agreed. "But also because she's been working on something she's not ready to share yet. A small business idea." My interest was piqued. "What kind of business?" "Custom social media content for local businesses," he explained. "She's actually quite good at it. She's been taking online courses in digital marketing and graphic design while Emma naps." I was stunned. "Digital marketing? That's my field." "Exactly." John gave me a significant look. "She's been following your career more closely than you realize. Every article mentioning your campaigns, every interview you've given, she's saved them all." "She has?" He nodded. "There's a folder on her laptop labeled Emily's work. She studies what you do, tries to understand the strategies behind your campaigns." The revelation left me speechless. All this time I'd thought Madison resented my success, when in reality, she'd been learning from it, using it as a roadmap for her own aspirations. "Why wouldn't she tell me this?" I finally asked. "Pride," John said simply. "And fear that you might think she was copying you. Or worse, that you'd think her attempts were amateur compared to what you do in New York." I shook my head, processing this new information. "That's ridiculous. I would have been thrilled to help her." "I know that," John said. "Deep down, I think she does too. But it's complicated between you two." "That's an understatement," I muttered, taking another sip of coffee. John checked the time on his phone. "Madison will be up soon. I should get Emma's breakfast ready." He stood, rinsing his mug in the sink. "I'm telling you this because I think you two can help each other, if you can get past the hurt feelings. Madison needs your expertise. And from what I heard last night, you could use a genuine connection to home." He was right, of course. Before I could respond, he added, "Maybe you could suggest showing her around town today? She mentioned the new cafe downtown has great pastries." I recognized the olive branch for what it was. "I'd like that." 2 hours later, Madison and I were in her car, heading downtown. Emma was staying with Mom, who was delighted to have grandmother time. The atmosphere between us was still awkward, but less tense than the previous day. "So," I began carefully, "John mentioned there's a new cafe downtown?" Madison nodded, keeping her eyes on the road. "Sugar and Spice. They opened about 6 months ago. Their cinnamon rolls are amazing." "Sounds perfect. I've been surviving on mediocre office coffee shop pastries for too long." Madison glanced at me. "You don't have time for proper breakfasts in your busy New York life?" I tensed, anticipating another barb, but her tone held genuine curiosity rather than sarcasm. "Most days I eat at my desk," I admitted. "I know it's not healthy, but there's always one more email to answer, one more campaign to review." "Sounds exhausting." "It is," I said, surprised by my own honesty. "Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it." Madison parked on Main Street, which had undergone some revitalization since my last visit. New boutiques and restaurants had replaced several vacant storefronts. Downtown Association got a grant, Madison explained, noticing my interest. They've been offering incentives for new businesses. The cafe was charming, with exposed brick walls and mismatched vintage furniture. We ordered a cinnamon roll for me and a croissant for Madison, and found a quiet table by the window. As we settled in, I heard someone call Madison's name. Turning, I saw a group of women at a nearby table, one of whom was waving enthusiastically. "It's Caroline and the girls," Madison said, her body language suddenly tense. "From high school." "Let's go say hello," I suggested. Madison hesitated. "They'll want to talk to you." "About New York?" "It's always the same questions." I understood her reluctance now. "We don't have to." "No, it's fine." Madison squared her shoulders. "They've seen us anyway." We approached their table, and I braced myself for the familiar routine, exclamations about my glamorous New York life, questions about celebrities I might have seen, comments about how I'd escaped our small town. All things that would only reinforce Madison's insecurities. "Madison, it's been ages," Caroline exclaimed, giving my sister a quick hug. "And Emily." "Wow, both Johnson sisters together again." The introductions went around the table, Caroline, Bethany, and Lauren, all vaguely familiar from high school. I prepared for the inevitable New York questions. "So, Emily," Caroline began, "Madison tells us you're some kind of marketing genius in New York." Before I could formulate a humble response, I surprised myself by saying, "Actually, Madison's the one with the exciting news." "Have you told them about your business idea, Maddie?" Madison stared at me, wide-eyed. "How did you?" "John might have mentioned it," I said with a small smile. "But he didn't give me details." "I'd love to hear more." For a moment, Madison looked like she might be angry, but then something shifted in her expression. "I'm developing social media content packages for small businesses," she said, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke. "Personalized strategies, content calendars, graphic design, the works." "That's amazing," Bethany said, looking genuinely impressed. "My brother just opened that new hardware store on Elm. He was just saying he needs help with that kind of thing." "You should give him my card," Madison said, reaching into her purse and producing a professional-looking business card with Madison Williams Digital Marketing embossed in elegant script. I felt a surge of pride. My sister had been working on this in secret, building the foundation of a business while caring for her daughter and dealing with financial stress. The conversation flowed naturally from there, with Madison fielding questions about her services and pricing. I sat back, contributing only when asked directly about New York, keeping my answers brief and redirecting attention back to Madison whenever possible. As we walked back to the car 45 minutes later, Madison was quiet. "I'm sorry if I put you on the spot back there," I said, worried I'd overstepped. "I just thought." "Thank you," Madison interrupted, her voice soft but sincere. "No one's ever done that for me before. Made me the interesting one in the room." "You are interesting," I told her. "What you're doing is impressive, especially while raising Emma and dealing with everything else." Madison unlocked the car but didn't get in immediately. "I need your advice," she said, the words seemingly difficult for her. "About the business. If you're willing." "Of course," I said, trying to contain my excitement. "I'd be honored." "Don't get carried away," she warned, but there was a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I just have some questions about pricing and packages." "Whatever you need," I assured her. As we drove through town, Madison pointed out changes, new businesses, renovated buildings, the community center John was working on. I saw our hometown through fresh eyes, not as the place I'd escaped from, but as a community with potential, where my sister was building something meaningful. On a whim, I asked Madison to stop at the mall. "I want to see where you worked," I explained. She seemed puzzled but complied. Inside, we wandered through the women's department of the store where she'd been employed. "The display is all wrong," Madison muttered, eyeing a mannequin wearing a poorly coordinated outfit. "We never would have approved that color combination." You have a good eye, I observed. Madison shrugged. I always liked the styling part of the job. Helping customers find what flattered them. An idea began to form in my mind. Have you thought about including styling advice in your social media packages? Visual merchandising for local boutiques? Madison looked at me, surprised. No, but that's actually a great idea. You could offer seasonal lookbooks for clothing stores, curated product displays for gift shops, all tied to their social media content. That would set me apart from other freelancers, Madison said thoughtfully. Most people around here just do basic posts without any cohesive strategy. We spent the rest of the afternoon shopping, not buying, just looking, with Madison pointing out effective displays and explaining how she would improve others. Her knowledge was impressive, her eye for detail remarkable. By the time we returned home, something had shifted between us. Not a complete healing, that would take much longer, but a foundation for something new. Not the childhood bond we'd lost, but a potential adult friendship based on mutual respect. As we pulled into the driveway, Madison turned to me. I have a proposal, she said, looking slightly nervous. It's probably crazy, but would you consider collaborating with me on a project? Just one, to help me build my portfolio? I felt a surge of emotion, joy, relief, hope. I'd love to. Thanksgiving Day dawned bright and clear. The aroma of roasting turkey and Mom's special sage stuffing filled the house, mingling with the scent of pumpkin pies cooling on the kitchen counter. For the first time since I'd arrived, I felt truly at home. Madison and I stood side by side at the kitchen island, preparing vegetables for the feast. She chopped carrots with practiced efficiency while I peeled potatoes, our movements falling into an easy rhythm. Mom glanced at us occasionally, a pleased smile playing on her lips. Whatever you two talked about yesterday, I'm glad you worked it out, she said, basting the turkey. It's nice to have my girls getting along again. Madison and I exchanged a look that contained volumes, acknowledgement of the work still ahead, but also genuine hope. We had a good talk, Madison replied, scraping carrots into a bowl. Emily's going to help me with my business. Dad looked up from where he was setting the dining table. Business? What business is this? Madison hesitated, then straightened her shoulders. I'm starting a digital marketing service for local businesses. Social media management, content creation, that sort of thing. Since when? Mom asked, looking confused. I thought you were taking time off to be with Emma. I've been working on it during nap times, Madison explained. Taking online courses, building a portfolio. I've already got 3 clients lined up. Pride swelled in my chest at my sister's accomplishment and her courage in finally sharing it. That's wonderful, honey, Dad said, looking impressed. And Emily's going to help? I'm going to collaborate with her on a project, I confirmed. Madison's got this idea for a holiday campaign for the Downtown Association, featuring all the local businesses. We're going to create a coordinated strategy across platforms, Madison elaborated, her voice growing animated. Videos, posts, even some in-store displays. Emily's going to help with the high-level strategy, and I'll handle the local execution. And you can do all this from New York? Mom asked me. Madison and I exchanged another glance. This was the part we'd stayed up late discussing after our shopping trip. Actually, I said carefully, we've been talking about me working remotely more often. Thompson has been moving toward a hybrid model anyway, and my team is already scattered across 3 cities. What exactly are you saying? Dad asked, setting down the napkin he'd been folding. I'm saying I could work from here occasionally, I explained. Maybe a week every month or so. Get a short-term rental when I'm in town. Or stay with us, Madison offered, surprising me. We have that spare room that's just collecting junk right now. It could be your office when you're in town. She paused, then added with a small smile, Emma would love having her aunt around more. The offer meant more than Madison could know, not just the practical arrangement, but the symbolic opening of her home and life to me. I'd like that, I said softly. Mom wiped her hands on her apron, trying and failing to hide the emotion in her eyes. Well, this is turning out to be quite the Thanksgiving. By early afternoon, we were gathered around the dining table, the spread before us impressive even by Johnson family standards. Dad carved the turkey while Mom supervised the passing of dishes. John kept Emma entertained with a game involving her green beans, and Madison and I exchanged occasional smiles across the table. Before we eat, Dad said, raising his glass, I'd like to propose a toast. To family, separated by distance sometimes, but never by heart. To family, we echoed, clinking glasses. As the meal progressed, conversation flowed naturally. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to censor myself around Madison, nor did she seem to bristle when I mentioned New York. Instead, we focused on the future, our collaborative project, Madison's growing business, Emma's upcoming preschool adventures. So, Madison, I said during a lull in conversation, I've been thinking about your social media packages. What if we included seasonal content calendars? Pre-planned posts that businesses could customize for their needs? Madison nodded thoughtfully. That could work. Especially for small businesses that don't have time to think about social media but know they need it. Exactly. We could create templates for different industries, retail, restaurants, services. I could design the graphics with variations for each season, Madison added, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Holiday themes, back to school, summer specials. This all sounds very impressive, Mom interjected, but what exactly does it mean? In plain English for those of us who still think a tweet is what birds do. Madison and I laughed, and she launched into a simplified explanation of digital marketing for local businesses. As I watched her speak, confident, knowledgeable, passionate, I saw my sister in a new light. Not as the resentful sibling who couldn't wait for me to leave, but as a capable professional carving out her own path. After dinner, while Mom and Dad dozed in front of the television and John took Emma for a walk, Madison and I sat at the kitchen table with laptops open, refining our business plan. I've been thinking, I said, scrolling through a draft proposal, you shouldn't sell yourself short on pricing. The packages we've outlined are worth at least twice what you're currently charging. Madison shook her head. Springfield isn't New York, Em. People here can't afford New York prices. But they can afford fair compensation for professional services, I countered. You're not just posting pictures on Instagram. You're creating comprehensive marketing strategies. Madison considered this. Maybe a tiered approach? Basic, premium, and custom options? Perfect. That way businesses can choose what fits their budget. We worked for another hour, hammering out details, our collaborative styles complementing each other surprisingly well. Madison's creativity balanced my strategic thinking, my industry knowledge enhanced her local insights. We make a good team, I observed as we finally closed our laptops. We always did, Madison replied softly. Before everything. Madison, I began, sensing an opening for the conversation we still needed to have. I want you to know how sorry I am. For missing your wedding. For not being there when you needed me. For making you feel like your choices were somehow less valuable than mine. She was quiet for a long moment. And I'm sorry for resenting your success, she finally said. For making you feel unwelcome in your own hometown. That wasn't fair. Life isn't always fair, I said with a small shrug. We just do our best with what we have. Madison reached across the table and squeezed my hand, the first time she'd initiated physical contact since my arrival. I've missed your wisdom, little sister. And I've missed your perspective, I admitted. It's easy to get caught up in the New York bubble. Sometimes I need someone to remind me what's really important. Like family? Like family, I agreed. And speaking of family, when were you going to tell me more about this baby? Madison's hand instinctively went to her still flat stomach. We weren't planning to tell anyone until after the first trimester. Emma just happened to overhear us talking. Are you excited? Terrified, actually, Madison confessed. With John still looking for steady work, and my business just getting started, the timing isn't ideal. The timing is never ideal, I said. But you've got support. Mom and Dad, John, and me, if you'll let me help. Madison studied me for a moment. You know what would really help? If my hotshot marketing executive sister could come to town for my first major client presentation next month. Having New York credentials behind me would make a huge difference. Consider it done, I said without hesitation. I've got vacation days to use before year-end anyway. And maybe. Madison hesitated. Maybe you could come for Emma's birthday in February? She'll be 3. It would mean a lot to her. To all of us. I wouldn't miss it, I promised. And speaking of special occasions, how would you, John, and Emma like to visit New York for a weekend? See the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center, maybe take in a show? Madison's eyes widened. Really? You'd want us to stay with you? My apartment is small, I warned, but there's a great hotel just down the block. My treat. Emma would love FAO Schwartz. We'd love that, Madison said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you, Emily. As the day drew to a close, I found myself on the front porch swing, wrapped in a blanket against the November chill. The door opened, and Madison emerged with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Just like Mom used to make when we were kids, she said, handing me one and settling beside me on the swing. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Do you remember, Madison said eventually, how we used to sit out here in summer and make up stories about the constellations? I remember, I said, smiling at the memory. You always had the most creative tales. And you always remembered the actual constellation names and myths. The perfect combination of imagination and facts. The perfect team, I echoed. Madison sipped her chocolate thoughtfully. I'd been thinking about what you overheard when you arrived. About me saying I couldn't wait for you to leave. I winced. We don't have to revisit that. No, I need to explain, Madison insisted. I was scared, Emily. Scared of feeling inadequate again, of comparing my life to yours and finding it wanting. It was easier to push you away than to face those feelings. I understand, I said. Really, I do. But what I've realized over the past few days is that I don't have to compare our lives. They're different, not better or worse. Just different paths. Different paths, I agreed, but maybe they can intersect more often. I'd like that, Madison said. And I meant what I said about the spare room. Whenever you want to work from Springfield, it's yours. 3 months later, I sat in that very room, now transformed into a comfortable office space, finishing up a video call with my New York team. Through the open door, I could hear Madison in the kitchen, discussing a social media strategy with a new client, the owner of a local bakery. Our holiday campaign for the Downtown Association had been a remarkable success, driving record foot traffic to local businesses during the crucial shopping season. Madison's client roster had grown from 3 to 12, and we'd settled into a rhythm of collaboration that suited us both. I spent 1 week each month in Springfield now, working remotely and helping Madison grow her business. The arrangement benefited everyone. I reconnected with my family, Madison gained a business partner with industry connections, and Thompson Marketing acquired several new clients through our network. More importantly, Madison and I had rebuilt our relationship. Not the idealized closeness of childhood, but something more mature and ultimately more sustainable. We respected each other's strengths, accommodated each other's flaws, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. As I closed my laptop and headed to the kitchen, I marveled at how much had changed in just 3 months. Who would have thought that overhearing those hurtful words, "Can't wait for Emily to leave," would lead to such transformation? Sometimes the most painful moments open doors to unexpected healing. Sometimes we need to face difficult truths before we can find our way back to each other. And sometimes, when we're brave enough to be vulnerable, we discover that the very relationships we thought were broken beyond repair can become the foundation for something new and beautiful. Have you ever had a falling out with a sibling or close friend that seemed impossible to repair? What finally helped you reconnect? Share your experience in the comments below. And if you found this story meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, it's never too late to heal a broken relationship when both people are willing to take that first step. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you courage and hope in all your relationships.